Welcome back to the O Show, everything crypto, every single day. I'm Wendy O, and today I have two really special guests. And if you're a part of the XRP Army, you're going to absolutely love this conversation. I have Hugo, the co-founder of Flare, and I also have Jesus, the co-founder of Centura and Firelight. Hugo, how are you doing today?
Really well, thank you.
And then Jesus, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. All right, before we get into the nitty gritty, because I think that you guys have some really cool updates you want to share with all of the different communities. But I want to get a quick, brief background on you both. So I will go ahead and start with Hugo from Flare first, and then we'll hand it over to Jesus from Centura and Firelight.
Hey, my name is Hugo Fillion. I'm the co-founder of Flare. Flare is a layer one blockchain focused on bringing value from non-smart contract tokens into DeFi. And before that, I was a commodity trader at a hedge fund.
Nice. And then as far as Jesus, talk to us a little bit about your professional background.
Yeah, my name is Jesus Rodriguez. I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer of Centura. We're essentially the biggest institutional DeFi provider in the market with over 3 billion in assets deployed, over 300 strategies. We serve the largest institutions in crypto. My background is as a computer scientist, across both large tech companies and Wall Street. And part of what we do at Centura, because we focus on institutional DeFi, we have to care a lot about risk. We spend a lot of time modeling risk, and we think about insurance as the ultimate form of risk management. So we collaborated with Flare in a very good project called Firelight that is going to be launching in a few days.
Awesome. I'm actually really excited to learn more about this because DeFi is going to be such a crucial part of the vertical integration of crypto into kind of traditional finance. And it's just something that TradFi doesn't offer yet. So I'm excited to hear from both of you on how this is going to work. But before we get into the details of that, I want to get a brief overview of Flare and to Firelight because there's a lot going on. So I'll go ahead and start with you, Hugo. Give us an overview of Flare.
Sure. So Flare is a layer one EVM platform. This means it's an independent blockchain that runs the Ethereum virtual machine for smart contracts. And the unique feature of Flare is that integrated into it is data protocols. It is secured by the network itself, not secured by some external set of third parties. And this means the data protocols can leverage the security of the network itself. And those are data protocols for things like price, the state of other blockchains, and for Web 2 APIs. And this means, unlike any other chain, we have data as a first-class citizen on the network, really because data is the key thing that allows you to do more with blockchains and with crypto.
No, that definitely seems to be a trend that we're seeing happen, especially in crypto, is the data feed. So I'm really excited to hear more about this. And then for you, Jesus, talk to us a little bit about Firelight.
Yeah, as I said before, if I start from the Centura standpoint, we serve some of the biggest institutions in crypto as a way to interact with DeFi in a way that generates true alpha. And an area that we spend a lot of time on is risk management. So we have been building for 4 years. We have built over 1,000 risk management models that protect your positions in DeFi. But we always get the question of, well, if you're so good at managing risk, why can't you insure or positions? And insurance is a very difficult problem to solve because of many reasons. Among some, it requires a monumental amount of a scale in terms of assets. So at the late last year, Hugo approached us with a very clever concept of staking assets like XRP that have zero cost of capital, so essentially it's zero yield, very high market cap, and it still haven't been widely adopted in DeFi. And we were working on insurance where we said, well, why don't we tie the two together? You can stake XRP, you can stake things like XLM, this type of first generation chains, and provide security to the top DeFi protocols in the market. And we think that we're very hopeful that that's going to give us a scale that DeFi insurance need. And we call DeFi insurance sort of the missing primitive. It's one of the things that has been long missing in DeFi for the longest time, but any attempt to solve this problem needs a very large capital. source of capital. And this idea that Flare pioneered, and obviously it wouldn't be possible within the FAssets protocol that they developed, is sort of the key to that scale.
No, I totally agree with you. That's always a big kind of topic in crypto is the whole insurance aspect of it. So I'm so excited that you guys are working on a positive solution. Now, I'm going to break this up with this question to both of you, or if you both want to chime in on it. But I've heard the term XRP awakening. Can you guys chime in as to what that is about and explain to the audience?
Absolutely. So Flare is built to effectively allow the huge amount of value, which is the majority of value in crypto, from non-smart contract assets to be used with smart contracts and it's on Flare. Effectively, those assets can be easily labeled as Bitcoin, XRP, XLM, Litecoin, Dogecoin, maybe a few others. But this represents over 60% of the value of the entire crypto market. And today, those assets are not really being used very broadly in decentralized finance. And so Flare has been entirely built around the premise of, okay, people want to use these, but they want to use them in a decentralized way. They don't want to go to a centralized third party. So Flare has built out an entire stack based around data, which that decentralized data allows for us to build protocols on top of that data that mean that we can use those assets in a purely decentralized way. And the first asset we're going for, and the thing we're really excited by, is being able to use XRP in DeFi on Flare and potentially using Flare's protocols across other chains also. So that's why we call it an XRP awakening. XRP holders have not been able to really get yield other than through centralized third parties, which have often gone to the wall, like Celsius. Flare represents for XRP holders the first time that they'll really be able to dig deep into DeFi with their XRP in a purely decentralized way. And that's why we call it an awakening. We
I
are
absolutely love
awakening
it.
the value of XRP.
Yeah, the XRP army is gonna love it. They love it on all my socials. So I'm excited about this. And then Jesus, did you want to chime in on this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hugo sort of encapsulated very well. I think this type of first generation chains, let's say XRP, XLM, they have survived every bear market. In crypto, they have very deep liquidity into centralized exchanges, but they never. So the market at some point bifurcated between the assets that were DeFi friendly and the ones that weren't. And as a result, a lot of these, all these holders never seen a yield in their lives. So and XRP is not part of the entire DeFi build up, right? Cannot be using programmable the DeFi workflows. So the idea of bringing XRP and DeFi via wrapping, via staking, is a big endeavor, because essentially you're bringing one of the biggest asset in crypto assets to DeFi to be part of all those workflows. So it can unlock a massive amount of TVL for the space.
Awesome. And then talk to us a little bit about adoption. Like, how has adoption been so far? And then what do both of you gentlemen feel about what is driving demand?
Absolutely. So we've constrained adoption on Flare. So we launched the bridge about 6, maybe 7 weeks ago. And this is the bridge that allows you to get your XRP onto Flare in a fully decentralized way. And we've constrained that bridge so that, because it's a new bridge and we've seen various things happen with bridges over time, we've constrained the size of that bridge. So how much can come across. But pretty much every time we've hit our limits. And right now our limit's about 70 million XRP, and we're sitting about 65 million XRP. And so that's a huge amount of value that has been transferred onto Flare and is in the DeFi protocols. About 70% of the XRP that has been moved to Flare is in at work in DeFi protocols, earning a yield. The other 30% is waiting for Firelight. So, that is, the adoption has been huge. What's driving it is, I think, the fundamental thesis we have always had, which is these are huge assets. They are liquid assets. They are assets that you have not been able to do anything with, broadly other than HODL. And finally, Flare is providing a fully tooled ecosystem with every possible primitive and new primitives that bring both value to retail, but also onboard institutions, particularly Firelight here, because Firelight is probably the key. The way we think about it is if we can execute it properly, Firelight is probably the key to getting institutions to play in DeFi at a 10, 100, 1,000x larger scale.
Oh, wow. So, I actually I might have to switch my questions because now I really want to learn more about Firelight and how it works and where the yield comes from. So I'll have to circle back to XRPFi and FAssets in a second. But Jesus, talk to us about Firelight, how it works, where the yield comes from, and also what you're seeing with the adoption so far, because this is getting interesting.
Yeah. So if you think about it, insurance is a massive unlock for institutions to come into DeFi. And we're not talking about the institutions, not even our the Centaura clients, our large crypto institutions, but think about fintechs and other like this new wave of adopters that we're seeing in DeFi. Being able to insure against your positions, it gives the level of security that those institutions need. I mean, in a simpler way to think about it is that risk in DeFi is encapsulated in all this abstract, in all this very complicated concept that nobody understands, like smart contract risk, like economic risk and things like that. What insurance does is that it flips that equation into something that is quantifiable, like collateral risk. Like I put this capital here, and if something happens, I lose it, and financial institutions take much larger risk than just dealing with the equivalent of DeFi, but it's risk that they understand and they can quantify, which is part of the problem with DeFi. So the way Firelight works, imagine that you can stake XRP directly from your wallet. That gets control into specific vaults that are controlled by multi-sigs and qualified custodians. On top of that, we model a specific what we call cover policies that are protections against protocols like Aave, like Lido, like Euler, like protocols that have some of the highest TVL in DeFi, no history of major exploits and things like that. And then the yield is getting paid to those holders. If there is an incident, the proof of the incident gets sent, and then the consortium approves it and the funds get released. But the key to this is to bring billions of XRP on chain to be able to ensure billions of TVL in those protocols. So the scale game is what without that is impossible, because if you want to ensure something like Aave or Lido, you need billions to start with to even be credible. And that is just very hard to do that with ETH. Or even particularly with ETH, that has been where all the insurance protocols in the past have used. So you need assets that have very low cost of capital and very large market cap.
Okay. Now I want to know a little bit more about XRPFi and FAssets for the average crypto user, because we've been talking a lot about institutions and kind of a lot of and data feeds and the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. But let's talk a little bit more about XRPFi and FAssets for the average crypto user.
Absolutely. So these two, including XRPFi, FXRP, and Firelight, are an intertwined thing. So we talk about them in one breath. This is why Jesus has very kindly come on today. So FAssets are effectively the protocol that Flare has built that leverages its decentralized technology to be able to get an asset that does not have smart contracts like XRP or Bitcoin or XLM onto Flare. We have launched FXRP, and we have, as I said earlier, 65 million units of FXRP on Flare at the moment. We'll be raising the cap from 70 million as Firelight launches to a much larger cap. And so once you have your XRP on Flare, you then want to engage in some yield earning activity, and that is XRPFi, so XRP Finance. And we see Firelight as really one of the core plants to XRPFi on Flare, because it's pretty much it's sort of the risk levels within the cover that you are sort of signing up to is very similar to staking. So if you look across other blockchains, they have sort of staking protocols. And one of the core assets in DeFi is not actually the underlying unit like Ethereum. It's staked Ethereum. Because what's really nice is to be able to lock your underlying token, in this case, your FXRP, in a staking protocol and earn that staking yield. But then to be able to do more downstream once you've received your staked version of XRP, and you can take that to a lending protocol. You can borrow dollars against it. You can take it to a CDP protocol. You can mint a synthetic stable out of that. You can take it to a yield protocol, a yield trading protocol. You can trade off the yield if you think the yield is going to change over time. And so what we mean by XRPFi is a full stack of protocols that allow you to do more, both with your XRP, but predominantly we think with staked XRP. And so XRPFi is a catch-all term for all of the things you can do on Flare with your XRP.
Nice. Nice. I want to know a little bit more about transparency and why this is a better model. And I would like to get feedback from both of you on this.
Absolutely. I'll go first with the bridge and why we're very keen on building DeFi. So if you look at the historical offerings for XRP, they have been essentially send your money to a company and they do whatever they want with it. They trade it, they do that, and ultimately, pretty much every time they've done that, they've ended up losing it all, and then there's a bankruptcy case, and everyone loses their XRP. And we saw this with Celsius. And there are some centralized vaults currently offering yield on XRP directly on the XRP ledger. But those entities are they're taking your XRP and they're taking them to a centralized exchange in order to earn yield through trading against that XRP capital. And that's very similar to what Celsius was trying to do. And the whole thing that Flare has done is that it has built an entire blockchain and an entire bridge and an entire set of smart contracts that allows you to effectively not ever trust a third party. And that's critical. So when you bridge to Flare, you're using Flare's protocols. You're not trusting a person. When you put your Flare, your FXRP into a smart contract, that smart contract is not the same as putting your money into a vault that is managed by someone that sends the funds off chain. It is a smart contract. It is monitored by the chain. It is it can only do what the smart contract rules allow it to do. Now, of course, if the smart contract rules are bad, you can run into trouble. But the whole point is the process is entirely transparent, and that is completely different to anything that has come before.
No, I definitely agree a lot because there was, crypto contagion was not a fun time for anybody in crypto. And we're starting to be able to really integrate DeFi into traditional finance, but doing it in a way to where people still retain somewhat of control. Jesus, I would like to get your take about the transparency and why this is a better model. And then I want to talk a little bit about security after this.
Yeah, so in terms of transparency, obviously we all think that DeFi is probably the key movement that encompasses the true ethos of crypto in terms of decentralization and transparency. So from that standpoint, having XRP in DeFi, of course, is going to be more transparent. However, that's a very generalist argument. If you narrow it down to the specific case of XRP, this is an ecosystem that evolved very centralized somewhat, and the way you earn yields is either by lending or by trading in centralized exchanges. So they never had a good exposure to DeFi, and culturally, that's the way that community evolved. So they're not necessarily the most DeFi supportive community. So now it's quite fascinating to me that there are two things happening. One, Ripple itself is becoming more friendlier to DeFi. So they launched our LUSD that we were an integral part of that launch on chain. They're launching a side chain that is going to have a strong DeFi component. But then at the same time, you have projects like FAssets and Flare pushing the XRPFi narrative. And I think the confluence of the two is making people say, oh, this DeFi thing is real, right? And XRP could be a good part of it. Hopefully Firelight will be an important component of that story. So to me, it's less, of course, when it comes to DeFi, it's going to be more transparent. It's about making that a strong case for DeFi for a community that evolved for 10 years completely detached from DeFi.
No, I totally agree. But I want to segue into security a little bit because that's going to be another hot topic that I think the audience would like to hear about. Hugo, do you want to touch on this, and then I can get some backup thoughts from Jesus?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, security is a never ending process. We, our budget, and I just reviewed it today for security for 2026 is extremely high. So,
I can only imagine, but we appreciate all the work you do in the back end. I know it's a lot.
but one of the ways we think about this is we test and we test and we test, and then we launch, and then we launch in a very constrained way. As I mentioned earlier, we have been maintaining caps on the FXRP bridge, so that it doesn't expand too quickly. In case there's anything that needs to be fixed. Because when you launch a new product, you never know what can go wrong. So we've been stress testing that bridge constantly. We will continue to stress test it. We stress test the network. We make sure that the applications on the network, follow as sensible security practices as we can make them do. Obviously, we can't monitor every application and make them follow security practices. But certainly, the applications that get a grant from us certainly have to, meet a certain threshold of security. And then lastly, we work with external partners, including, artificial intelligence entities that are constantly monitoring the ecosystem to check for signs of something bad happening. They then contact us. They contact the people who are operating the protocol so that they can take action as fast as possible.
Right.
And so we're very security conscious, and we think that decentralization ultimately ends up far more secure than centralization.
No, I definitely agree. And do you have any takes on that, Jesus?
Yeah, well, I mean, having been building on top of the Flare infrastructure for a little bit, obviously we have a first row seat to the work that they have done. And I could tell you, obviously being a relatively new ecosystem with a new bridge, you're going to get that hesitation. We work with all the largest protocols in the market. We've been very early deploying capital into very new ecosystems, and including Flare. So we know the type of work they do. We have to wait multiple times for FAssets to be ready because they were very conscious about the security practices there. I don't think he was ready to talk about this, but I could tell you some of the
Sure.
work that they're doing with things like trust layer execution environments. He is probably some of the most innovative security work I've seen in this industry in the last 2 or 3 years related to security, and never been exploited and never had an issue. So it's a good ecosystem to build on. Of course, it's gonna take time, but it's a very, very good infrastructure to have the first stop for Firelight.
No, I definitely agree. And then as far as institutional adoption, why do you think that this method is going to be better for institutional adoption? Because we know institutions are here. We know that they want to be into crypto, but at the same time, why is this better?
Yeah, so I can probably start with that one because that's the world of Centaura, right? So I think the institutions are coming, but it's probably a different type of institution than what we have been talking. Like when people talk in conferences about this stuff, they typically refer to traditional finance and the BlackRocks and all that. And I think the adoption of that for DeFi is still going to take a little bit. The first wave of institutions that are bringing a new wave of TVL to DeFi right now is somewhat paradoxically centralized exchanges. So you're seeing a lot of the Krakens, Crypto.coms, and other opening large earn programs now for DeFi. Then you have the fintechs. So you have the Revoluts, the Robin Hoods, and all that are in close proximity. That's a second wave of institutions. A lot of those exchanges hold enormous amounts of XRP. All the XRP in the world is in exchanges. So providing a mechanism in which you can deploy at a massive scale and still earn a yield, because you're ensuring like very, very large protocols that can support that scale, is a monumental opportunity for a lot of these exchanges. Otherwise, there is really no way to generate yield for XRP.
No, definitely. I totally agree. And Hugo, did you want to touch on that a little bit?
Why do I think institutions are interested? Well, I think, going back to security, we've worked very, very hard on it. But secondly, I think Flare provides data that for developers that is hard to find, and very, very hard to get onto chain in a secure way. And to give you an example around that, if you go to let's say the other data feed providers, and you look at the like the lesser well used data series, that obviously the very large data series, the ones that are used the most, they have relatively good support. If you go down the list, and you don't need to go down the list far, suddenly you see they're only provided by 2 or 3 or maybe 5 providers. That is, you can't really build on that. You can't build a product that can scale on that. What Flare has built is a data product a data network that effectively uses the entire chain, all of the validators of the chain, and all of their stake that is there to bring that data on chain. If you're an institution deploying capital, and your capital is benchmarked to some data series, or has a transformation because the data changes, you want to make sure that data is really as valid as possible. So I think that's an interesting aspect of what we're doing. And otherwise, I think we're just looking to find work further with Centura and find other builders who also want to build absolutely groundbreaking products that take advantage of Flare's capabilities, that are sort of structured towards the institutional end of the spectrum.
No, I definitely agree. And those are all very interesting points. As far as before we wrap up, what can viewers do right now to learn or to get more involved? I always direct everybody to the description because we have all of your links. They can do their due diligence, they can self-educate, they can join the communities, follow you guys on X, and ask questions. But anything else before we wrap up? And what else can viewers do to stay engaged and learn more about what you are all building with Flare and Firelight?
Absolutely. I'll go first. So if you are interested in Flare, there's multiple ways you can get involved. I'd certainly recommend, one of our ecosystem wallets, two that come to mind, are Bifrost. And of course, we support Ledger through MetaMask, Trezor through MetaMask, and all of those kind of those wallets. We're also building specifically for XRP something we call smart accounts, which means you'll never have to leave your XRP wallet. You'll never have to actually do a transaction yourself on Flare. This allows you to effectively use your XRP on Flare without ever leaving the ecosystem that you're comfortable with. All the transactions happen on the XRP ledger, and Flare ingests all that data and then allows you to effectively control your XRP across the ecosystem. So when that comes out, I would definitely recommend users play with that. I think it'll be a really interesting way. It's pretty much the first time anyone's done that in this space.
Nice.
Yeah, I think in our case, go to firelight.finance, follow the project on Twitter. There is a lot of activity. On X, there is a lot of content. We're launching the first vault next week. So there is a lot of anticipation with that. So we're welcome all the support.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to Jesus and Hugo for coming on the O Show. And audience, thank you so much for watching. And if you guys want to learn more, all of the links will be down in the description below. And thank you both, gentlemen, for coming on. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. And you.